Tesla has applied for permission to proceed with the second phase of Giga Berlin. As you may remember, the Model Y factory was initially given a capacity of 500,000 vehicles annually from Giga Berlin. However, the actual capacity is approximately 50,000 more than 500,000. The current run rate is still only about half that. Tesla has now requested a million-year capacity. As you may remember, the initial Giga Berlin approval process was not without its challenges, given Germany's notorious red tape and Tesla's decision to proceed with the construction without even securing approval. Eventually, though, things worked out despite numerous complaints about things like the area's lack of water in this most recent iteration. We're hearing that Tesla is in the public consultation stage for Phase 2. It has in the past been indicated that there will be 4 phases in Giga Berlin, somewhat inferred as 3 vehicle factories and 1 battery factory, and this plant is going back well over 3 years now, as we know that future plans do not always pan out and the industry doesn't always go in the direction we expect. Things change, and Tesla reevaluates. They look at the chessboard and see what best moves they have with the pieces available. In other words, we don't really know what this Phase 2 is going to be, but we can always speculate. For starters, we pretty much know is expected to be an additional 500,000 vehicles a year. Now, given that Tesla isn't close to global Model Y capacity yet, and the fact that Texas and Berlin have more than an additional 500,000 units a year still remaining there, I'm going to assume that this expansion will not be for additional Model Y units. If there were more Model Y units, then Tesla would also need to find more demand, which is another way of saying they would have to reduce prices, which means reducing margins, and at this stage, it's really going to start to affect profits, even if it was what I would say the best-case scenario with a new mid-range Model Y using Cal's new M3 cells, perhaps around 270 miles of range, and rear-wheel drive and low cost. I think it would still be too big a push, and like I said, there's still over 500,000 units remaining at the current factories for when the 4680 sales are finally ramped. Therefore, I'm ruling out any further Model Y expansion. A popular opinion has been that this is a Model 3 factory. We have a Model 3 factory in the US and China, yet not one in Europe. This would be a Model 3 Highland custom-built factory facelift, which sounds like a bigger refresh as we get more updates, potentially using castings now and structural battery packs. The end result would be a lower-cost Model 3 that is still a good seller and sells well in Europe, undoubtedly a superior car with a more contemporary appearance and feel. But keep in mind that we now only produce 550 to 600,000 Model 3s annually. If this expansion were to account for 500,000 Model 3s, it would effectively double the number of Model 3s produced worldwide. I don't think Tesla could increase demand for the Model 3 by double and still make a profit. If Tesla could solve FSD or something, maybe there would be enough demand. But even in that case, I believe they would be better off producing larger numbers of a smaller vehicle. Which brings us to the most likely future vehicle tests. Why would Tesla want to produce a vehicle similar to the Model 3 or Model Y when they have already advanced to Gen 3 manufacturing techniques? Tesla is a forward-thinking firm that doesn't focus on the past. Looking for starters, the objective for vehicle production is to get as many Teslas out on the road as possible, kind of like the printer industry. Sell the printer is really cheap and make all the money on ink. Get as many Tesla cars out on the road and make money from SSD subscriptions. This is the real business model for Tesla autos. This is where the big money lies, and the whole Tesla stock price to $3,000 possibility, or perhaps that will also require over taxes. But that's somewhat related anyway. This would be my bet. And if we look at the constraining factor for EVs, then it's going to come down to sales and batteries. Tesla will be resorting to LUP sales, or some hybrid version at least. Like I said, Tesla are looking forward. They need to scale. There's no other cell in the world yet that can scale as fast. Therefore, whatever it is being built in this factory will most likely have to use these cells, implying smaller batteries and lower range, or a smaller vehicle. I have no idea why Tesla wouldn't want to construct a Gen 3 factory here, if EVs could be produced for half the price of a Model 3. That statement alone should be enough evidence as to this being a Gen 3 factory. Then you might ask, why only 500,000 vehicles? That's not very many. We want millions of Gen 3 vehicles a year. Elon even saying about 5 million a year. Of the 2 new models, presumed to be a compact and a van, compacts are the best-selling vehicle type in Europe. If Giga Mexico is looking at a capacity of 1 or 2 million a year, then surely Europe should be around similar numbers. Well, I think the Tesla are applying for capacity of vehicles at this stage. rather than a certain factory size, as in they'll have permission to produce a further 500,000 vehicles a year for now. And eventually, when they ramp up the factory and improve the processes, I'm assuming they could eventually apply for permission for more, possibly indeed closer to 1 million a year. On top of that, how I always like to stress is that EVs are still cell-constrained. Weber tests, they get enough sales from to build another 1 million vehicles a year, or even 500,000 for that matter. Well, remember, Cal are also building a new European loft factory in Hungary with a proposed 100 gigawatt-hour a year capacity. Although this factory is also earmarked for some legacy autos like BMW too. I'm not sure what legacy is ready to make that many electric cars, especially if they're losing 10 to 20,000 per car. So it's going to be something like a $10 billion industry. So Tesla won't be able to get all the supply. However, for a Gen 3 compact at 500,000 units a year, tests would only need about 25 gigawatt hours a year of sales. This is not a huge number, so perhaps there is plenty of supply there if Tesla want to expand, and Cal could also expand if the remaining 75 gigawatt hours a year or so were for legacy or loss for legacy to take over the remaining portion of that factory. So maybe Tesla has more plans for that facility. Maybe Tesla will also open a mega pack factory in Europe, which seems like a wise move considering the costlier energy there. If you factor in the 2 other megapack factories, that would eventually be some serious income in for Tesla Energy, possibly earning $15 to $20 billion annually in gross profit from energy at a serious foundation. Of course, we know that this Phase 2 factory is not for megapacks, as it talks about the 500,000 vehicle capacity. Elon said they would announce a new factory this year, but I think that was implied as a new location. This is obviously not a new location and merely an prolongation. In order to obtain this growth, Mexico and the new location that was mentioned later this year are starting to make Tesla look like a really big company. 3 years later, when Black said they could buy it back, Twitter would gain since both businesses' stock prices would increase. According to Black, the company has more than enough cash on hand, minus $18.9 billion and $100 billion in free cash flow from earnings over the next 3 years, which should be sufficient to cover a $10 billion buyback. This estimate accounts for all potential capital expenditures, which for Tesla's high-value projects, like the Optimus robot or additional Giga internet connections, could come to more than $35 billion. Gary Black, the founder of Robotaxi, shared his opinions with the board of directors of Tesla in an open letter. The company goes on to state that because of its confidence in Tesla's leadership and product ideas, Tesla is the largest investor in the future fund. Is Gary Black right when he predicts this? Time will tell. It was also stated that Berlin would expand its battery production facility from 50 gigawatt hours per year to 100 giga hours per year. This may not necessarily refer to the production of cells, but rather to actual batteries that are made on site from importing sales. A 50 gigawatt Area 4680 factory was supposed to be there as well, but obviously not much is happening there at the moment. 100 giga hours per year of batteries is more than enough for 1 million vehicles there, so we're talking about big numbers anyhow. Berlin doubling its capacity and hopefully adding more Gen 3 expansion is kind of a big deal. The facility won't be operational until maybe 2025, but even so, it will bring Tesla one step closer to reaching its 5 million year capacity in 2025 or 2026, which will significantly boost the EV industry.